with Mr. DeGuerin, Mr. Chesnoff, Mr. Ray. We have Mr. Lewin and Mr. Milius, Mr. Bailey and Henderson and Miata, and Mr. Lewis is, I think, monitoring this from the jury room. Mr. Durst, of course, was too ill for court until today. He's deemed fit for court by the jail. He's present, but I understand that he's not able to stand, and therefore he's not able to get dressed. He has a, I believe he's, if I may I discuss the catheter? I mean, it's an issue. He has a catheter in a bag.
Obvious, Your Honor.
Pardon?
It's obvious. It's there's a catheter bag.
I can't see it, but I believe you. There it is. Okay. He's got a bag with urine in it. Okay. So there are, and I understand that he is in a good amount of pain because of the catheter.
Not because of the catheter. That's in addition to the catheter. He's in chest pain and he's unable to breathe completely. He's breathing only shallow when he tries to take a deep breath. It's painful.
Now, counsel has been concerned that, my concern is, first of all, if he can't be dressed, what steps we might take to make him more presentable, or if we should even try a jacket over the back as one suggestion, perhaps a blanket over the front because he's over his chair to maintain his dignity to some degree, which is it's hard to do under the circumstances, but that would help address that. One doesn't ordinarily meet with the public with a catheter, a bag in full view. So I mean that's a valid concern. The other concern that counsel have pointed out to me, and we did meet ex parte, so I'm going to be circumspect about what I would share, but there is an issue about the ability to communicate with the client during proceedings. It has occurred to me that during proceedings where there's a videotape, that already happened. In other words, there is no attorney-client or Sixth Amendment issue whatsoever in that instance, as far as I know. Even with a live witness, I'm not sure that it rises to that level. So, but I'm just putting it out there. So you made suggestions, Mr. DeGuerin. I know that you've said you don't want to go forward today, but you said that off the record, and that was, I mean, not anything of that nature. The people need to respond to that. So I didn't stop you. I just said you'd have to repeat it if that was what you're going to say. So I'll yield. I think I've set the stage for you to describe what you are asking of the court.
First, we've had difficulty getting reports from the hospital and from LA County.
And I have ordered those, by the way, delivered to you, for you to reveal as
I was just about to say that, Judge. With your help, we may have reports this afternoon. And I've been in contact with the lawyer, and the court has been in contact with the lawyer, Karen Joynt, Joynt. She's, with your assistance, has promised to get us those reports this afternoon. So we can't actually put them in the record at this point. But we do know that he was diagnosed with urinary tract infection with sepsis, which is a system-wide inflammation and of the blood. Our doctor has said if he has sepsis, he should be in the hospital on IV antibiotics. This is one of the consequences of bladder cancer and malnutrition. He has an impaired immune system, making him more susceptible to infections. The pain is from the infection and catheter, and large doses of pain medication will make him lethargic. This is a critical situation, Your Honor. He shouldn't be in court. He should be in a hospital. And that hampers us as lawyers from going forward. So we request an adjournment until we get him hospitalized and treated.
Your Honor, may I add one thing?
Yes?
So that the court and the people know, we have been trying since his admission to the hospital to get what you ordered today. And in fact, Mr. Durst's personal lawyer actually went through the hospital to try to talk to the nurses and the doctors with a HIPAA release in time for us to have information to share with the court and the people. And the hospital refused to provide her with any information whatsoever. So I add that, so the idea that somehow we're doing this like at the last minute without an effort to fully inform, the record should reflect the fact that we've done everything. Mr. DeGuerin tried to get them, Ms. Ames tried to get them, and we have HIPAA releases. We all signed them. We were told we needed to sign them, and that's why we did it, and nothing was provided. In addition, Mr. Durst has indicated that I think he was having trouble with time and place, and in terms of calendar and things like that, that he expressed to us as well, Your Honor.
He is disoriented as to time. He told me earlier this morning that he thought it was March. And
Okay.
for the record, we are in June.
We are. So he's been okayed to come to court today.
Okay,
And-
no, he has not been okay. Look at
No,
him, Judge. He's not okay.
Perhaps you don't understand what I just said, Mr. DeGuerin.
I understand what you said. You said he's okay to come to court. He's not okay to come to court.
No, I said in the past tense. He's been okayed to come to court. In other words, he's been approved by a jail physician to be delivered to court, that he is not too ill to come to court today. So that's, I'm letting the record reflect something that you haven't described. Obviously, he is here. And that is, you make it seem as if it's in a vacuum. I'm sympathetic to his pain and discomfort, and I'm also sympathetic to the extra difficulty that presents for a defense lawyer. I understand that. I used to do it myself. I understand, but this is a very difficult proposition for you. Now, what the record should also reflect is that there are health and safety procedures at the jail and at the courthouse, right? So that, so you are requesting an adjournment based upon, you're making an argument. This is governed by a case we've cited a number of times, People versus Avila. The circumstances here are more severe than the circumstances in Avila. Nevertheless, that is the case that I think describes what we ought to do, which puts a burden on the court to, as much as possible, mitigate the circumstances for the defendant, accommodate him, but not to the extent that he not be subject to trial.
Well, Judge, appoint an independent doctor of your own choosing.
I appointed a doctor. Your doctor has supplied an opinion, but that's private. That's ex parte, and that's not part of the record yet. It was part of the record earlier, but it's not part of the record today.
One other thing, Your Honor.
That doctor has not seen him.
I know the court is citing to the protocols. With all due respect to the protocols, the jail was provided an order asking that he receive the heart testing that Dr. Klein prescribed several weeks ago. In spite of that, he has not received it, and he was in the hospital where they could have done it instead of sending him back to the hospital and sending him to court. So with all due respect to the protocols, I'm not sure the protocols necessarily comport with the medical treatment that any one of us would want for ourselves or someone we knew.
No, perhaps not, but again, they were willing to accommodate him, to allow him to have testing by, I'm not a doctor, I don't tell them what to do. You made a case for him receiving additional tests. I ordered them so long as it didn't conflict with court. He was hospitalized on Thursday. The test was scheduled. It couldn't be accomplished because of this treatment. You say that it should have just been done because he was in the hospital. They easily could have accommodated your order. That's not necessarily that simple. So you can't criticize the protocols when I order them to do something else and they don't do something else because a medical emergency arises. I just want you to be, I understand you have a difficult situation, but let's be clear about what's actually happening. Mr. Lewin?
Thank you, Your Honor. A few things initially. Number one, this doesn't exist in a vacuum. We have to look at what the history is here. The history is Mr. Durst is on tape talking about faking dementia. He's on tape talking about using COVID to get a new jury so he can start over. He's on tape discussing his unhappiness. He filed with the court a letter complaining about the trial, what his lawyers have stipulated to. He doesn't want to be here. He doesn't want this trial to continue. His lawyers have made probably 50 mistrial motions for 60 different reasons. So that's the first issue. The second thing, which I think is important, is counsel's expert and counsel really maligned the hospital jail system, the medical jail system that has been taking care of Mr. Durst. That jail system apparently on Thursday, on their own initiative, got Mr. Durst, saw that he was not in the condition that they wanted him to be, got him assessed, got him treated, got him back here, and it's a urinary tract infection. Certainly not a nothing that anybody would want to have, but it certainly is not consistent with the allegations that have been made repeatedly by counsel and by their physician talking about the, abysmal conditions. They make it sound like he's in a prison in China and he is not being given any medical care. That's the next issue. The third issue would be that everybody knows that Mr. Durst has been in jail. There's been evidence of calls from jail repeatedly in Pennsylvania now, etc. The idea that Mr. Durst is in custody on this kind of case is not an issue whatsoever. The court, I would request the court to instruct the jury that simply that Mr. Durst, not to form any opinions, as the court has already said, regarding that instruction. And if the jury sees that he is in custody, that really is not an issue. Next, with respect to his bag, they should cover it with a blanket. In addition, if you really look at it, the prejudice would be on the people's side because Mr. Durst looks like a very sympathetic character right now. He's sitting in a wheelchair. He looks very old and feeble. He's got a catheter hanging out. This doesn't look like someone who's murdered 3 people. So it is what it is. The next issue, which is with respect to witnesses testifying. We are in a position today, Your Honor, we have one witness that we have to put on. I've just talked to Mr. Balian. Out of respect for defense counsel's request, we are going to really speed up that witness and not cover a bunch of material we were going to cover with her to get her done. After that, we will be using videotape testimony for the rest of the day.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Sure, Your Honor.
We did have an instruction. So as far as I'm not inclined to adjourn. Let's do what we can. If he has to go home, we'll go back. He'll go back. I'll supply a blanket if you like. I have a blanket. I can give him a blanket. He needs to put a jacket over the back of him. You can put a jacket over the back. If you wish, you can drape it over the chair, and that would conceal the evidence of him being in jail. But we already heard a reference to jail. And by the way, I looked over the transcript over the weekend, and I believe that my rulings were correct on striking any testimony that had the slightest hint of or suggestion or even possibility of prejudice. But as far as a reference to jail, it's unavoidable. So I intend to adapt Calgic 1.04. Tell me if you object. The fact that the defendant is in custody. Wait a second. Actually, I liked your other one better.
Do you want to say may or may not be in custody?
Or has been in custody. I like that one. Where'd that one go? All right. It must not be considered for any purpose. It is not evidence of guilt. It must not be considered as any evidence that he's more likely to be guilty than not guilty. You must not speculate as to why the defendant is in custody. In determining the issues in this case, disregard the matter entirely. The only thing is that there is some issue where being in custody may in some way bear upon it, but not really. I could put it that way, don't you
Yes,
think?
yes, Your Honor.
So the defendant has been or is in custody. How's that? Has been or is in custody. And then I think it's well taken that we'll go with videotape. Videotape doesn't present any issues. I think he'll be at his best right now. He may get tired under these circumstances, and you'll move into tape where it's less. That's what I'm going to do. I did facilitate this. I've ordered medical records to be delivered, and he's here. Let's take advantage of that and go forward.
Your Honor, can the court put on the record that the court has formally accepted stipulation 63 relating to Linda Obst?
Yes, the court has formally accepted the stipulation number 63 regarding Linda Obst, pertaining to Linda Obst.
We have stipulation 64. Are we ready with 64?
We're going to read it to the jury when we come in.
Has Chip signed off on 64?
Would you like a blanket? You like a jacket? What do you want for him?
Let me ask him.
Okay, Deputy Washington can, well, I don't know. You have the jacket. Is his clothing in the back? Someone can bring it out, the jacket? Okay, move over recess.
Yeah.
Please face the flag of our nation and recognize the principles for which it stands. Perfect. 1 is now in session. The Honorable Mark E. Wyndham, Judge, presiding.
Good to see everyone. Good morning. Welcome back to Department 1, People versus Robert Durst. Mr. Durst is present with Mr. Chesnoff and Mr. DeGuerin. Mr. Lewis and Mr. Ray are present also. There's Mr. Ray. We have Mr. Balian, Mr. Milius at council table. We have Mr. Lewin, Mr. Miata, Mr. Henderson also. Apologies for the elevators here. I thought the airport courthouse was the only place where the elevators broke down consistently, but apparently we had a, oh yes, thanks. Apparently we had an elevator issue here. So apologies. I know it's hard for you to get back to the floor if you left the floor. All right, Mr. Durst is present. He's had some health issues, so you should know about that. But draw no conclusions from that. That's just so that you know that that's why he's not addressed as he would ordinarily be. And another point is that, ladies and gentlemen, the fact that the defendant has been or is in custody, it must not be considered for any purpose. It's not evidence of his guilt. It may not be considered as evidence that he's more likely to be guilty than not guilty. You must not speculate as to why the defendant is in custody or has been in custody. In determining the issues in this case, disregard this matter entirely. It should not affect your judgment at all of the facts of the case. And with this, you have a witness to call. Who's ready, Mr. Balian?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may call your witness.
Thank you. And with the court's permission, we will go out of order from the last witness who was on the stand.
Yes, we are taking a break from, let's see, when we were last here, it was Mr. Oliver?
Yes.
Mr. Oliver is going to be back. He's scheduled for Wednesday.
I believe so. Yes.
Right, so we're taking a couple witnesses out of order, and then we'll pick up with Mr. Oliver again on Wednesday.
And I have a stipulation for with Mr. Lewis. This is on witness Jane Verzi. This would be, may I mark this as People's 108, Madam Clerk?
Yes, 108.
Counsel, will you stipulate to the following? This is instead of the testimony of Jane Verzi. Jane Verzi, if called as the witness, would testify as follows. Jane Verzi is an employee of the Durst organization / Van Dorn Realty and has been in the company's employ for over 47 years. Verzi is the receptionist for the corporate office and first began working while Joseph Durst was still alive. Verzi answered the telephone, greeted people, and scheduled conference rooms for meetings. Verzi now does the same job as when she first began at the company. Verzi stated that she has witnessed the organization grow from a family business to a large organization, employing hundreds of people. In 1982, Verzi worked alone in the front office of the Durst organization / Van Dorn Realty most of the time. Verzi would screen all incoming calls and transfer them to the correct office. Most of the Durst family members had their own secretaries, and Verzi would send the incoming calls to corresponding secretaries. During that period, Seymour, David, Douglas, and Robert Durst all had their own office. Verzi recalls that in the time period encompassing 1982, Durst family members were the only ones to call and collect to the Durst organization / Van Dorn Realty. Of those family members, Robert Durst was the one who called and collect most frequently. So stipulate. Thank you. So stipulate.
Thank you. The court accepts your stipulation. You'll now call your witness.
Thank you. The people call Susie Harmon. Or Susan Harmon.
Please stand on the witness stand, please. Raise your right hand to be sworn. Do you solemnly state that the testimony you may give in the cause now pending before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you. Please be seated.
Your Honor, pursuant to agreement, I'll be handling the objections on this matter. Just go to the court counsel.
Thank you.
For the record, please state and spell your first and last name.
Susan, S-U-S-A-N, Harmon, H-A-R-M-O-N.
Thank you.
I think I'm going to give up my microphone permanently to the witness. I think all witnesses would benefit from
Being heard.
this. Take that and speak directly into that microphone.
Okay, is this better?
Mr. Bailey, and you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning.
Good morning.
Ma'am, what is your occupation?
I'm a beautician, therapist, coach.
Okay. For how long have you been a beautician?
50 years.
And have you ever owned your own salon?
Yes.
What time period did you own your own salon?
In the early 80s in Venice.
Okay, and we're talking about Venice here in Los Angeles County?
Yes. Pacific and Windward.
Okay. So in the early 1980s then, were you living and working in the Los Angeles area?
Yeah, we lived in the canals and I could walk to work.
Okay. And where was this salon in Venice?
At Pacific and Windward.
Okay. I'm going to ask you some questions about some events that go back to that early time period, okay, in your
Yes,
life?
sir.
If you don't understand something I'm asking, please let me know.
Okay.
If you don't recall something that's responsive to a question I'm asking, it's okay. I don't remember is a perfectly acceptable answer. Let me know, okay?
Yes.
And I want you to do your best to tell us only things that you know personally from your own personal experiences. Things you've seen with your own eyes or heard with your own ears. Can you do that?
Yes.
All right. Did you know a woman named Susan Berman?
Yes.
How did you know Susan?
I knew her because my sister was her roommate in high school, and she later became engaged to my brother and became a very close personal friend, collaborator with me on various things.
How old were you when you first met Susan?
I think I was 9. I thought earlier it was 6, but when I calculated when my sister first went to Chadwick, so I was in about the 3rd grade.
Did your sister attend Chadwick High School with Susan?
Yes,
Or Chadwick School?
we all did.
Were you at Chadwick while Susan was there?
No, she had graduated.
Okay. And after she graduated Chadwick, Susan that is, did you know her when she went off to UCLA?
We weren't real close then. She had come often, almost every weekend during high school to stay with us because Chadwick is a boarding school, but those first years of college, we weren't close, no.
At some point, after Susan finished college, did the two of you become closer?
Yes, she and my brother found each other again, and then we were very close, all of us.
When was that approximately? Like what time period?
It must have been like the late 70s, early 80s,
Okay.
when she moved to be closer to my brother when she left New York.
So at some point, did you know Susan after college when she was living in Los Angeles?
Oh, yeah.
And at some point, did you know Susan when she went to New York to do this, produce this play with Paul Kaufman?
Oh, of course. She took us. She took my infant daughter and I both.
Okay. You visited her in New York while she was there?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
We went to the rehearsals.
Okay. And then at some point, did you stay in contact with her when she came back from New York and lived here?
Oh, yeah.
Then I take it you knew Mela?
Oh, of course. I knew Mela before Susan knew Mela. They were Paul's children, and he was very close with my brother
Okay.
and our family.
You knew Sarah? Is that yes?
Yes.
Okay. And when Susan came back from New York, how often would you communicate with her?
Once a week, maybe 2 weeks would go by, but rarely.
How close would you say you were to Susan Berman?
Closer than I was to my sister. I mean, she was like a supplemental sister, advisor, exciting person that was always enthusiastic about what I was doing.
Did you know Mr. Margulies?
Yes.
Were you at her wedding?
Yes.
Were you in the wedding?
Yes.
Were you one of her bridesmaids?
I wish I could say for sure, but I think I was, but it's kind of a blur, really. But I was in her wedding and went to the shower and.
I have a photograph. Am I marked this as People's 109?
Yes.
Can tell you what I wore.
I'm showing you what's been marked as People's 109. Is it on your screen or no?
Yes, it's on mine.
Do you recognize the people in that picture?
Yes, Mr. and Susan.
Was that a picture taken at their wedding?
Yes.
Okay. And I take it then you knew Susan when her relationship with Mr. Was no longer, correct?
Yes, when he
I'm sorry?
overdosed.
I'm sorry?
When he overdosed,
Okay, he passed away.
yeah.
And do you know Susan later on when she established a relationship with Paul Kaufman?
Yes.
Okay. I want to ask you some questions about Susan's financial situation. What was her financial situation from your point of view at the time you first met her when she was in high school? Or, I'm sorry, she wasn't in high school, when you first met her.
Well, the boarding school, everybody, you don't exactly. It was just, she was my sister's friend, and she came home with us on the weekend, and she was fluid. I mean, I never, was just, she was like we were, dependent on our parents, but with some freedom. She wasn't terribly indulged, and neither were we.
How about after college? What was her financial situation after college?
She was good. She had lived on Beekman Place in New York, and she was very conservative, always with money, and there wasn't any sign that she would ever be not well off.
At some point, did you notice her financial situation change in her life?
Towards the end of her life, it became evident. She had helped me negotiate some things, and so I and other people that she had helped, she could help you. She could help you better than your lawyers could help you and advise you how to talk to people. So because she had helped me and others, when it did seem that she might need some money, money was provided to her. Not in a coordinated way, but I think everybody wanted not to see her in any deprived condition.
When did her financial situation start to turn? At what point in her life in relation to her trip to New York?
Well, they put everything into the musical.
Okay, so did Susan put all of her money into that musical as far as you
Yes,
know?
and she had invested through Paul with some things that took a weird turn due to some particular family distraction that happened. But after that, it began, but not really. Things slowly deteriorated, and it was, Susan wasn't wanting you to know. She always paid her everything. You'd have a fight with her in the street if you tried to pay, even going to the movies.
So are you saying that it started to turn after this New York project?
I would say yes, but it wasn't visible for a few years, really.
Okay.
She fought, her landlady, et cetera.
Okay. Are you saying that you weren't aware to the full extent of it, but you can just tell it was changing? Is that a fair statement?
Right.
Okay. And towards the end of her life, did you start to get a glimpse of perhaps her financial situation not being what she projected to you?
I didn't want her to worry, and so I encouraged her to ask Mr. Durst.
Okay. So what I'm asking you is if you could please just listen to my question. Towards the end of her life, did you notice her financial situation worsening? Yes or no?
I sort of peeked at what it was, but it wasn't that evident to me as it was to some other people.
Yes, Mr. Chesnoff?
Non-responsive, I'm trying to help Mr. Bailey get his.
Yeah,
yes or no.
I'll strike it.
Okay, so just listen, yes or no, okay? And towards the end of her life,
A little bit.
okay, that's fine. If it's agreeable with the court, I'll,
Please wait for the whole question, but I guess it's understood there.
okay. You started to notice it a little bit towards the end, yourself, personally.
Yes, and make it stop.
Okay. Did you loan her money, you personally?
I didn't loan. I gave like everybody else gave.
Okay. How much money do you think you gave Susan?
I'm sorry to say that it was only about $500 a month for a year. I had about $12,000 that I wanted to help with, and
It's okay. You
should have helped more.
Okay. I want to take you,
And we took her shopping, and we went to get food. We
Okay.
kept that going for a while.
you helped buy her food during the end of her life?
Right.
Okay. So now listen to my next question, please. I want to ask you, in 2001, were you aware of the time period when Susan died? When she was killed, you're aware of that period of time in her life?
Of course.
Okay. That Christmas that she was killed, what were you doing that Christmas?
Well, we were anticipating her coming, and yeah, she came and she was a member of our Christmas time.
So you're saying she came. Did she actually come over on that Christmas day?
No, I went to look for her
So let me stop
because
you
I
there.
didn't hear from her.
Okay.
She,
So,
I mean, she didn't come, but we knew something terrible had happened by the time Christmas came. We knew.
Let me stop you there. Did you have plans with Susan to see her that Christmas?
Yes,
Was it on Christmas Day you were supposed to see her?
yes.
What was the plan?
The plan was that she would come over. I think it was going to be with Niall and maybe with Tom Patton, just like she had many Christmases, New Year's, Thanksgivings before.
All right. And these plans you had with Susan to see her on Christmas, had Susan confirmed these plans with you?
Yes.
Now, based on your relationship with Susan and your knowledge of Susan, was Susan the type of person to keep her plans with you?
and make me keep them.
Okay. Was Susan the type of person who, if her plans were changed or she was not going to make plans with you, where she would let you know?
Immediately.
Did Susan ever tell you, hey, I'm not going to be having Christmas with you and your family that year?
No.
Did you know who Robert Durst was?
Yeah,
Did Susan talk to you ever about Robert Durst?
of course. Yeah, highly. I mean, a dear friend.
How would Susan act? What would her demeanor be like when she would discuss Robert Durst? I'm trying to figure out from you how good of a friend he was to her.
He was a very good friend to her, and she to him. A very, like your college bud is like, you just love him.
If Susan were going to bring Robert Durst over at Christmas to your house, would he have been welcome?
Would he have been welcome? Well, sure.
I jumped the gun there.
If, based on your relationship with Susan and your knowledge of Susan and your past habits and customs with her, if she were going to bring a guest over with her on Christmas, is that something she would let you know?
Yeah, because of the plate and the seating with my mom's way that she did things. She would say, I'm bringing someone else, or I'm bringing 3 other people. But she would say, of course, she would say.
Okay. And did she ever do that? Say, hey, I'm bringing Robert Durst over for Christmas?
No. And she knew my mom would find a gift. And so that's kind of how it was. If you said at the last minute, my mom would still give you a calendar. So Susan knew that my mom would feel bad. So she would have said if someone else was coming.
Okay. Was Susan the type of person, based on the way she spoke about Bob with you and her past interactions with you, where if she was going to be going out of town with Mr. Durst at that period of time around the holidays, where you would expect she would tell you?
Objection, Your Honor.
Would Susan talk to you about things she would do actively in her life? Would she tell you about them?
Oh, yeah.
If she was when she was going out of town, would she tell you?
Well, if it involved a time when I might not see her and was planning on it, she would, yeah.
Okay. So then, during this holiday, Christmas holiday period, did she ever tell you she was going out of town with Robert Durst?
No, she was really specific. We're going to the Directors Guild to watch a film, which I missed. So the next day, it was like everything was planned up. There was no and she knew that if she said she was going with Mr. Durst, that we would all be, yay, you. And it wouldn't have mattered, but she would have definitely told us.
And she never mentioned anything about going anywhere with him around that holiday season. Is that correct?
No.
Just listen to the question.
Is that correct?
Answer the question.
Correct.
All right. I'm going to take you back to the early 1980s, okay? When you owned that salon in Venice. Did you know about Robert Durst then?
I knew they were friends, yes.
Did you know that Robert Durst was married from Susan?
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Okay. Did you know who Kathleen Durst was?
Yeah, I think she would have, yeah, of course.
Back in the early 1980s, did you become aware that Kathleen Durst had disappeared?
I don't know about the disappeared part, but I became aware that something untoward had occurred.
How did you learn that?
Because in an afternoon, Susan got a hold of me on the phone, and I had a kind of a gap between clients, and she said, I have to talk to you, and
Okay. Stop right there. Where were you when you got this call from Susan?
Well, this is above an old pharmacy in Telegraph and at the beach. I mean, not Telegraph, I'm sorry.
Pacific, right?
Right, Pacific and Windward.
Okay.
And so
Physically, where were you? What building were you in?
that particular pharmacy building, I'm looking out towards the ocean.
Okay. And is this where you live? Is this where you work?
This is the salon was made above the pharmacy.
Do you remember where you were in the salon when you got
And
this?
so I was sitting at my desk, but her tone, I kind of got up and I was walking because she was agitated. So
Did you-
it kind of made me agitated.
When you got this call from Susan, based on her demeanor and the things that were said, did you get a sense of how recent these events had just
Like
occurred?
maybe just then, like, yeah.
Yeah,
It was
what?
like, yeah, it was like right then.
Susan gave you the sense that this was
Yeah,
an
like something happened.
and let me just ask you a question. Please listen and wait for me to finish and then answer, okay? Did Susan give you the sense, based on her demeanor and things she was telling you, that something had just happened?
Yes.
I'm gonna object to demeanor. I think they were on the phone, so I'm.
Overruled.
Right, okay.
And what could you tell? Don't tell us about words. I want you to talk about tones of voice. What could you tell from tones of voice?
Uncharacteristically confiding in me. Like, just, I got to tell you this.
You just spoke quickly when you said that. Was she speaking quick like that?
Yeah.
Was that more quickly than she normally spoke with you?
Yeah, in a way that, yeah,
All right. So,
that was not directing. Like, she would urgently direct you what you were going to say or what she was coaching you about or what she wanted. But this was about her confiding something terrible had happened.
okay. I want you to tell us, to the best of your memory, what did Susan tell you on this call?
She said that her friend Bobby had had a fight with his wife. She didn't know what she was going to do. If there was something, she said, I don't know what I'm going to do. And I was like, what you're going to do? He'd had a fight. There was an accident on the stairs and that she had to do something.
Okay. Did she tell you when she said I had to do something, did she say something that you took to mean that she was going to do something to help Bobby?
She had to figure out how to help them, I thought. I didn't know what him. It was like the situation had happened.
Did she tell you whether Kathy had died?
No.
Did she say anything to you that implied whether it was something good or bad?
Something terrible had happened. Terrible had happened. An accident with the stairs. She was just...
And was she clear with you that this, whatever she was telling you happened during a fight that Bobby was having with Kathy?
Yeah, like it was a terrible occurrence.
Did she specifically tell you as you sit here today what she did to help? Do you know?
No, she just, I have to do something. Like when Susan would start thinking about it.
Objection to the rest, Your Honor, here.
Just a
She
moment.
answered the
Did
question.
she tell you as you sit here, what do you know? So, okay, she had to do something, I'll let that stand. But generally, some questions call for yes or no, and other questions call for you to elaborate. Listen carefully to the question that's presented to you. You may proceed, Mr. Bailey.
Thank you. Did she tell you during this call anything about who she felt was going to be blamed for whatever happened?
It wasn't any blame. It was upset and awfulness. It wasn't blame. It was just...
Did she ever say anything about making phone calls?
No. She was planning on doing something, but no, did she say no?
Okay. And these memories you have here today that you related to us about them having a fight, Bobby and her husband, how certain are you that she said that to you?
Oh, absolutely, because, yeah, I'm absolutely certain.
Is there any doubt in your mind?
No.
And this statement she made to you about during this fight, there was some form of an accident and involved a staircase.
Been asked and answered.
I actually haven't heard the question yet, so I don't know if it's been asked.
I'm sorry, Your Honor.
It's a mid-question. So
Okay.
let's see if you can finish it in a way that's different from our previous question.
Yes.
Start over.
So I just asked you previously about your memories and how confident or not confident they were regarding the part about a fight, okay?
Correct.
Now I want to ask you something different. The part of the conversation where she told you that it involved a staircase and an accident, how confident are you that, in your memory, that Susan told you that?
Completely. Completely confident.
Any doubt in your mind?
No.
And the part of the conversation where Susan told you that she was going to do something, she had to do something to help her friend Bobby. How?
To help. I can't, do, you know, it wasn't to help the situation.
Okay. So the part where she told you that she had to do something to help the situation, how confident are you in your memory of that?
Absolutely.
Any doubts in your mind?
No.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions.
Mr. Chesnoff, you may cross-examine.
Oh, I have. One more? Fine. No, fine.
Thank you.
Good morning, Ms. Harmon.
Good morning.
I'm going to speak loud so that everybody can hear me. It's not because I'm yelling at you.
Yeah,
Okay. And we had a chance to be introduced before court,
we
did we
did,
not?
sir. Yes.
And as you know, I represent Bob along with my colleagues.
Yes.
Got to be a little patient with me during this examination because we're going to cover a lot of time. And would you agree with me that over time, memories fade?
Some.
Okay. And I'm going to take you through various discussions that you had with different people in law enforcement over the years about Susan's homicide. Is that fair?
Just a couple of times.
Okay, well, let's start off with December 26th of 2000. Do you remember that?
Yep.
And that was within days of Susan's...
2 days.
Excuse me?
2 days.
Okay.
Will you wait until he finishes the question, please?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, Ms. Harmon. And when you met with them, you told the police that Susan had always had serious concerns about security. Do you remember that? At her house?
I don't know if that's my phrasing. She locked the door.
Okay. And yet, so the jury understands, you also told the police when you couldn't reach Susan for the Christmas dinner, you went to the house, correct?
Correct.
And you actually just climbed in through the kitchen window to get in, correct? So, although the place presumably would be locked, it was very simple for you to gain entry, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And when you gained entry, you later found out that was within a few days of her having been discovered murdered in the house, correct? Correct?
Yes.
And the police apparently, within days, had not secured the premises in a way that kept you out, did they?
That's a call for speculation.
Overruled?
It also assumes facts not in evidence, Your Honor. She asked me to speculate on what the police did and what the result of that was. There's no first-hand knowledge. Also lacks foundation.
Go ahead. Overruled.
Thank you. I'll repeat the question. There was nothing done by the police to prevent you from getting into what was still a crime scene, was there? You got?
I don't know if there was.
Okay, well,
I got in because I know those old houses.
right, but you knew that she had been discovered. You find out that she's been discovered later on in the house, correct?
Right.
Okay, and within days of when she was murdered, you climbed in the window.
No, I didn't know that she'd been murdered. I
Okay.
was looking for her.
Right. Within days of her murder, you climbed in the window, correct? Without whether you knew at the time you climbed in or not.
Yeah, but I can get into a lot of places you maybe can't.
If I need a cat burglar, I'll find you.
Well, I mean, I grew up in the valley. Those old houses, you can get into them.
Right. Very easy to get into, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. At the time you told the police, you didn't know of anyone who would want to hurt Susan. Do you remember saying that to them?
Yes. That's correct.
And you also told them that not only did she borrow money, or in your case, you were kind enough to gift it, but she borrowed money from her wealthy friends, either Danny Goldberg or Mr. Durst, and even money from her manager, Mr. Brenner. You remember that?
Yes, and they had borrowed money from her. Maybe not those individuals, but many people did.
Okay. And that's what friends do, right?
Right.
At no time during that initial interview with the police, within days of Susan's homicide, did you ever tell them about any conversation you had with Susan concerning Bob Durst and his wife? Did you?
Why would I?
Okay, that's not the question, ma'am. You didn't, did you? You may have your reasons, but at the time, you never mentioned the conversation that you allegedly had with Susan about Kathy and Bob Durst, did you?
Right, but it wasn't about them.
Okay. Again, ma'am, your motivations are yours, and I respect that, but what I'm trying to establish is that within days of being interviewed, of the death of your friend being interviewed by the police, you didn't discuss that, did you?
No.
Okay. Then on January 6, 2001, shortly after the homicide, at LA Police Headquarters, you're interrogated by an investigator named Becerra from New York. Do you remember that?
A little bit.
Okay. Did you know he was from New York?
Yes.
And did you know that he was out here investigating the disappearance of Kathy Durst? Because that's where she lived?
At that time, I guess that, yeah.
And you told him that Susan was having trouble with her landlady, correct?
Objection relevant, Your Honor. Court's prior rulings.
Okay, all right.
What's relevant?
Going through the things that she thought were important.
Okay, so for that purpose only, for a limited purpose, overruled.
So you
She
talked
was
to...
suing her landlord to stay in the house. They liked each other, but she was going through this motion to stay in the house.
Right. And you told Mr. Becerra about the fact that she was having a dispute with the landlord.
Well, a legal dispute.
Illegal dispute. You told him that.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was true.
And you told Becerra that Bob was Susan Berman's friend, correct?
Of course.
Now, this isn't... Let me ask it to you this way. Did you tell Detective Becerra at that time that Susan had told you that Bob had a terrible trial, use the word trial, about his wife's disappearance, but that Susan Berman's testimony cleared him? Do you remember telling that to the detective?
I don't know those exact words or how that would have, I guess if he was asking about, I know that she intended to do something to help him. So if I said those words exactly, then that was, that was how I felt, that he had suffered and that she helped him.
Right,
But I don't know the word trial.
Okay.
Would have not been in reference to a legal trial, just that he was trials and tribulations.
Okay, but you used the word testimony. Do you remember that? Those kind of go together, trial and testimony.
Right, but there wasn't a trial or a testimony.
Right, but at that time, that's what you told the investigating officer Susan had told you, correct?
Well, I don't know if she would have used the word testify. I'm unclear about that.
Can we pull up LADA 035448, please?
I think the proper, if he's going to refresh a recollection, the proper way to do it is to
Yeah, you didn't.
Oh, okay, I watched Mr. Lewin the other day with Mr. Oliver play the tape, so I thought.
No, that's it. Do you have an inconsistent statement? You sure can.
Okay, well, that's how I read what you just said.
Okay, you can impeach with an inconsistent statement.
Thank you. Your Honor, may I approach? I'll just show it to her. It's easier.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes, you may.
You want to put a note?
And whether I'll be able to see it or not, I'm not sure, because I have a visual impairment that I often can't read things.
Okay,
Give it
so
a try.
if you can't, tell me, and I promise you I'll read it exactly.
If you just read it, that'll be easier for
Okay.
me than humiliating myself by
I'm not trying
squinting.
to- I don't
No,
want-
I realize that.
If you're gonna read it to her, then go back to the lectern.
Okay. In one interview, I keep stepping on this
Okay, careful.
plug. Mr. Harmon stated that Ms. Berman always spoke about Robert Durst, and on one occasion, Ms. Berman mentioned that Bob had a terrible trial about his wife's disappearance, but she cleared his name, and he was exonerated. Does that refresh your recollection?
I don't know if I would have used the word exonerated, but I do think that I couldn't get any information after, when I asked her a couple of days after my conversation with her, but
My question-
did I feel that she had helped? Yes, that
Okay.
was the impression I got from her.
We understand that, but now we are 20 years later,
Right.
and you are telling us what you remember.
Well, you're telling me I said that word exonerated. I don't know as I said that.
So if the policeman wrote that in the report, would he be inaccurate? You have no reason to think this policeman wasn't.
I'm not going to, neither exonerate or say he was doing the right thing. He may have shorthanded what I meant, but
Okay.
I knew that she helped in a terrible situation because she loved him.
Okay. And this was about the wife's disappearance, correct?
Yes,
But
I
as you
knew
told
that.
Mr. Balian earlier, when she expressed concern to you in the conversation that you had at the office, she expressed concern for both people, Kathy
Right.
and Bob.
Exactly.
And that, like everybody was saying, including Mr. Durst when he spoke to the police, that they had had an argument. There was nothing said by Susan in the conversation that you talked about with Mr. Balian to suggest any wrongdoing or anything illegal. You've said that all along, haven't you?
Well, something terrible happened that she had to help with. I assume by that many years later, I kind of did think it.
Okay, now you do. But back then, when you were actually hearing the conversation, you told Mr. Balian that her concern was about the two people, her friend Bob and a woman who had disappeared, correct?
See, I didn't really keep track. I didn't know about the disappearance and all of that. I just knew that one day she had called me upset and said she was going to do something about it. And then years later, you're saying I said that she got him out of a pickle. Well, she probably did. She got a lot of people out of pickles.
Okay, I understand. But would you agree with me that your memory of what happened then would have been better then than it is 20 years later?
No, I don't. No, because of whatever all that was, bringing Kathy's death.
You answered me. No, you don't. And here, Mr. Balian will have a chance to ask you.
That the witness be allowed to explain her answer. She was cut off before she could finish it, and it is responsive.
The answer may stand. Don't interrupt witnesses, please. Go ahead.
Well, she
Apologize.
didn't finish. She said
Sure,
no,
she-
and then started to speak, but Mr.
Yep, thank you. Mr. Balian can pick that up on redirect. Okay, she answered.
Excuse me one moment, Your Honor. Court's adjourned.
Yeah.
God, this thing. 035448. Lauren, if you get a second, you can print that out for me. I'll move on. Do you remember telling Mr. Becerra that Ms. Durst had a cocaine problem?
No, I wouldn't have known anything about that, no.
You don't remember Susan telling you that back
No,
then?
No,
So
no.
that if that's in a police report attributing Susan telling you she had a cocaine problem, the policeman would
She
have...
had a cocaine problem?
Not Susan, ma'am. You told the policeman within days of the murder of your friend that Kathy Durst had a cocaine problem and that Susan had told you that. Remember that? I don't want it up. I want a copy of it.
If that's what I said at the time, I don't picture that, but that could have been, sometimes she did gossip. So if I repeated that, then it was true. But it was unusual that she would say that, but I guess that was something that she told me. Sometimes she would tell me naughty things like people, but she knew that
So
that wasn't.
Susan told stories, she gossiped, correct?
That's compound.
She didn't tell stories. She occasionally might gossip.
I'll withdraw.
From the room?
Sorry.
Stipulated. That's hurtful, Mr. Chester.
I know it is.
I have feelings.
You have a thick skin, Mr. Moon. But you'll get one back at me, don't worry.
I'm sure.
Everybody did, that
Yeah,
then.
but Susan was a writer, correct?
She didn't embellish.
But, ma'am, please. Susan was a writer, correct?
She was a reporter.
She didn't write a book?
She did, and it was very reporty.
Right. And she was very good with words, was she not?
She was very good at telling the truth.
Okay. Ma'am, we're not really quarreling. I'm just trying to help these people
And I'm trying to
understand.
help you.
Okay, so
Just,
help.
do listen to the question. This is different from ordinary conversation.
Yeah, but I don't want to be led to say something that isn't true either.
Right, don't say anything that's not true, but as far as the meaning of what you're saying, you need to let the lawyers do their jobs, and they're paying attention, close attention to what you're saying. So don't say anything that's false, and if you need to explain your answer, you can do that
Thank you,
also.
Judge.
Okay, she was a reporter, correct?
Yes,
And she wrote, correct?
yes,
And she wrote very well, correct?
yes,
And she was good at telling stories, correct?
good at telling the truth, yes.
Okay. Well, if she wrote a fiction piece, was she telling the truth? Or was she writing fiction?
Fiction,
Fiction is fiction, right?
not necessarily, no. You can use, I don't know,
I'll move on, Your
fiction.
Honor. I'll move
What
on.
does that mean?
Okay. I want to get back to this statement that you made, that Bob had a terrible trial and that the testimony cleared him. Do you remember telling that to the policeman?
That's been asked and answered twice.
Overall,
You remember telling that to the policeman?
Just what I told you, that she wanted, when I had spoken with her about it, that she had wanted to do something.
So I don't have to make you read. I'm going to read from the report. It's 035448. Susan Berman told Susan Harmon that Bob had a terrible trial about his wife's disappearance, but that she, Berman, testimony cleared things up in the matter. Is that something you remember saying now?
That sounds closer to how I would say it, yes.
Then during that same interview, she told you that, we went over the coke thing. Do you remember her telling you that Kathy was kind of overwhelmed by her lifestyle change, having not had the kind of wealth
That's
that...
going to call for double hearsay. Also, 1390 is not an evidence code section that the defense can take advantage of and bring in hearsay.
Okay, well, let me unpack that one slowly. Hold on. Okay.
To make it easier, it's double hearsay with
Right.
neither level having a...
You know what, Your Honor, I'll just withdraw it, it's fine. I can move on to something.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Do you remember speaking to a Detective Stevens on January 15th, 2001? He called you in Arizona?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. You reiterated to him that when you grew concerned about Susan, you climbed through the kitchen window, correct?
Right.
And that Mr. Brenner had said he knew nothing about going to a Christmas dinner with Susan at your mom's. Do you remember telling him that?
Maybe I thought he was coming and he wasn't.
Okay, then on January 10th, Detective Anderson and Becerra being from the East Coast, and I believe Anderson is from the West Coast, met you at the Santa Monica Police Department. Do you remember that?
Yes. But
That
just
is-
back, Niles did go, I had to get him,
There's no question. Wait till there's a question.
okay.
11001 LADA 125216. You told the two detectives that Susan Berman always spoke about Robert Durst, and on one occasion, Miss Berman mentioned that Bob had had a trial about his wife's disappearance, but she cleared his name and he was exonerated of all wrong. Remember telling that to two more policemen?
That words I would talk like. What you read before is more
Okay.
exonerated of all wrong. I don't know. That's just not how I talk.
Okay. Do you remember telling them you had never met Mr. Durst and could not provide any further information, correct?
I met him at her wedding.
Okay. By the way, what were you wearing?
I was wearing a very kind of a see-through-y 1930s flowy navy blue with pink and white flowers on it. Maybe a hat matching navy heels.
Got it. But you told them at the time that you met with them in January of '01 after Susan was dead that you had not ever met Mr. Durst.
I guess I was wrong because
And you also said you could not provide any further information. Remember saying that?
well, yeah.
So you certainly, at that time, didn't tell any of the investigating police officers anything about the alleged conversation you had with Susan about some kind of an accident, did you?
There was no question to me about anything I knew about that. It
Okay.
was all mixed up with her death and
Right.
had very little to do with what might have happened or what would.
Okay. But at the time, they were talking to you about the murder of your dear friend, Susan Berman, weren't they?
Right, so what would that have had to do with?
Well, that's a pretty good question, actually, but in fact, as a person concerned about your friend's murder, you did not share with the police a story of her being animated.
Because impugning Mr. Durst would be the last thing that any true friend of Susan would want to have happen.
Right, because Susan loved Bob, correct?
And even if he were guilty, she
Okay.
still wouldn't want him.
Objection, non-responsive, motion to strike the answer.
All right, let's see.
The last part.
All right,
Your Honor, can the court also direct the jury
Yeah,
to disregard that?
disregard, anything I strike, you're to disregard that.
It seems like you're trying to get me
Objection,
to.
nothing.
Please.
non-responsive
So
at
this
point.
is
Sorry,
not a
I'm sorry, I
conversation.
apologize, I
Yeah.
apologize.
So it's clear, what I'm trying to do is help Mr. Durst by asking questions to help the jury understand your memory and what you said close in time versus what you've said in court today.
So let me pause. So the reason we do it this way is because some questions might not be, might be irrelevant or might call for hearsay. So if there's no question and you just tell the whole story, parts of it might not be appropriate. In other words, we need to regulate it by question and
Right, but the
answer.
exonerated and got him off or whatever. I mean, I don't even think I ever
Right.
said that. I never would have said, I mean,
So, Ms. Harmon, so they can ask you questions about that sort of thing, and you can answer it, and you have to trust that both sides will do their job to explore the
Thank you.
meaning of your
Thank you, Judge.
memory and your words, but you don't have to take care of that yourself. So just listen, it's important for me to run the trial,
okay. I know.
right, that we go question and answer. So,
All right.
okay, Mr. Chesnow, please resume.
Thank you, Your Honor. In November of 2015, you had an opportunity to speak to Mr. Lewin, Detective Camacho, on the telephone. Do you remember that?
Yes,
Okay. And do you remember saying, that's at page 10, because there are so many facts between now and then that I'm a little confused if she actually said these things. Remember telling that to Mr. Lewin? That's line 24.
which things was that?
The things that he was asking you about the conversation about Mr. Durst.
Question is vague, you would answer specific.
Yeah, yes, sustain. Are you?
Okay, I can do it.
You've been going since 9, I just want to know, can you go to 11 or a little bit longer or no? Okay, great, thanks. You may resume.
Thank you. Line 20. Yes, I mean, what I can remember was something about a staircase and a fall and her helping him. And I was in my salon at the time, and there wasn't people in there, and I was trying to listen. But it seemed so you helped. See, this is why I wish I could be hypnotized, because there's been so many facts between now and then that I'm a little confused if she actually said these things. Remember that?
Well, I'm sorry I phrased it. I remember very strongly.
Okay, ma'am, my question for you is,
I don't remember saying I was vague, no.
okay, would you think it would help you if I read it to you again?
No, I hear that I hear how I sounded.
It was tape recorded.
Yeah,
Okay. And at the time, you said, I'm a little confused if she actually said these things, correct? Page 10.
I may have said that, and I am not confused about it.
Do you remember telling Mr. Lewin that Bob Durst was lovely and her greatest friend,
They were very good friends together.
and that you described him as the funniest, the most helpful, her friend? Remember that?
As she would describe him.
Okay. That's how Susan felt about him.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Let's go to another question about your memory of these events. Mr. Lewin was asking you at the time of this conversation with Susan whether she was in New York or California. And your response to him is, I'm so sorry, I'm so vague. In 2015, you didn't even know where Susan was located when she was talking to you, did you? That's on page 14. Is that fair?
I'm trying to think where she was.
Okay, but that's not the question. The question is, at the time, you acknowledged to Mr. Lewin that you were vague about the facts surrounding this conversation, correct?
I may not have known where she was located having the conversation with me,
Okay.
presuming that she was in LA.
But you asked on multiple occasions of the law enforcement people, I wish I could be hypnotized.
Yeah, I do.
Right, so you could really remember whether something were said or not said, correct?
Your Honor, could the court instruct the jury with hypnotism is irrelevant.
This
Now
is a
it's-
speak-
Now it's been interjected.
so-
The court instructed the jury that it's improper, we cannot hypnotize her.
Okay, so no. 2, that's a speaking objection, I don't, you need to cease them. I may instruct about that, you know, I'll hear you out about, you know, it's her words for what, you know,
Right.
it's her words.
At the
Object
time,
under relevance
let-
352 to any
let-
questions regarding hypnotism. Your Honor.
Okay, I'll overrule them. Go ahead.
thank you.
I have since,
Ma'am, please, I don't want to,
you're impugning
No,
my
no.
memory. I have 93
okay.
percentile in my age group. I've been recently tested in
As
the
a-
last
as
couple
an
of
old
years.
man-
Extraordinary memory.
as an old
Okay.
man myself, I understand about memory and how it changes over time now.
For
And I
you.
respect that you have, in your opinion, a good memory. But what I want to ask you is this. At the time that these law enforcement people are trying to gather as much information as they can from you, you are telling them that your memory is vague and that if you could get hypnotized, in your mind, you think that would help you remember whether something was actually said or what was said. Is that true or not?
Assumes facts not in evidence,
Overruled.
352.
You may answer the question.
I'm not, I don't know even how to answer that question.
Well, you wanted to be hypnotized, right?
I really,
Yes or no?
Your Honor,
You asked 4 times when,
stop, Roach, please.
I don't feel comfortable.
So, all right, I'm receiving these answers for a limited purpose. I'm receiving them for you to determine the credibility or believability of a witness given a statement of a desire to clarify memory through hypnosis. Now, there is no evidence before you that hypnosis actually clarifies someone's memory. The point is simply that the person made the statement. Draw your own conclusions about what that means about the clarity of her memory. Judge this evidence and all of the evidence surrounding the testimony when determining that credibility. You may continue, Mr. Chestnut.
thank you. Regardless of the effectiveness of hypnosis, in your mind, you asked on multiple occasions whether or not you could be hypnotized because you wanted to be sure that whatever you're saying is true.
Not
correct?
is true, more accurate. More accurate.
Okay.
Not is true. What I'm telling you is true.
Okay. Now, do you remember telling the police that the subject really never came up again except for the conversation you've described in court?
I asked, and she said it's fine.
She
If you
said,
could just go like that and you wouldn't discuss anything, whatever it was anymore.
right, do you remember saying, she said, oh, that's nothing?
Right, that's done. Might not have
No,
said that's
you-
nothing, but she said that's taken care of.
Right now, you're saying done, but when you described it to the police, you said...
If I said that, that's what she meant, yes, okay.
Now, you really didn't know anything about Miss Durst's disappearance until after Susan passed away, did you?
No, I didn't follow all that. No, I didn't.
So when you previously said that you were aware of her disappearance, the reality is when you spoke to Mr. Lewin in November of 2015, you acknowledged that you didn't, it said page 15, you didn't know about Kathy's disappearance until after Susan's death, correct?
Well, I didn't know that it was called the disappearance. I mean, she wasn't there. I knew that.
Okay. She wasn't there means she's disappeared.
Something occurred,
Okay, I got it.
whether she departed or departed, I mean, how,
But you knew nothing really about it from Susan.
I didn't follow the tabloids about it.
But Susan never told you anything specific about her disappearing, did she? That's what you told them.
Right, she didn't address it,
Okay.
no.
Now, you'll acknowledge that there were a lot of stories and things circulating about the events of Miss Durst's disappearance. Would you agree with that?
I don't know, I'm not real on the follow the bouncing gossip ball thing.
Okay, so when Susan, if she said what you said she said, about an accident and a staircase, you don't know whether Susan was telling you about a rumor she heard?
No, she was telling me something had occurred.
Right,
She
but-
called me.
Okay, but you don't know the source, do you?
Yes, she had talked with Mr. Durst.
No,
She was
you've
very
never
upset.
said that before, ma'am. When have you ever told anybody?
Your Honor, this is argument, he's arguing with the witness over.
Only in tone.
Where
only in
would I
tone.
have found it out?
Okay, from the newspapers, from the Jinx, from the fake movie?
I didn't see any of that stuff. Who wants to watch that?
All right, it's our morning recess at 11 o'clock. We will we'll take a 15-minute recess and resume the cross-examination at that time. Do not talk about the case or about any of the people or any subject involved in it with anyone, including the other jurors. Do not make up your mind about any issue until after you've discussed the case with the other jurors during deliberation. Do not discuss your testimony with any witness.
Yes, sir.